and gentlemen, is India's middle class tightening its belt? Is the food inflation hitting 1/3 of India's 1.4 billion people the most? According to a Citibank report, the Indian urban consumption is at a 2-year low this month. That's right. Indian urban consumption is at a 2-year low this month. Look at these. We've got these from different reports to give you a sense of what's happening. Maruti Suzuki lead has said that demand for cars are drying up after a 2-year dream run. Nestle India has reported the first quarterly revenue drop since 2020. Hindustan Unilever lead has claimed that branded items are being swapped for cheaper unbranded ones. First sale volume to see decline in 11 quarters. McDonald's has cut on dining out, has said that people are cutting further on dining out and sales are declining. Burger King has said there's a 3% drop in quarterly same-store sales. People are choosing cheaper meal options. Pizza Hut similarly saying people are dining out less and the sales are declining. KFC has a very similar story. But how closely is this linked to inflation in the Indian economy at a time when the world is witnessing some of the most tense geopolitical situations? First, let's look at the food inflation in India. Food inflation for October is at 10.87%, up by 1.63%, up from September. It has pushed the retail inflation to a 14-month high, breaching RBI's upper limit of tolerable inflation. Before we go any further, let me just tell you the interest rate cuts that you're waiting for. That is definitely on hold for now. It's going to be a while before that's going to be announced. Vegetable prices have been the main culprit according to the data that's out by the government, as they shot up by over 42% in October from a year ago. 42%. Coupled with oil prices rising with a 9.51%, fruits again around 8%, cereals 6%, pulses at around 7.43%. You know, all of these are the primary contributors to food inflation. And just look at this. Whether it be vegetables, whether it be fruits, whether it be cereals, all of these are really items that are consumed across the strata. Food prices have played havoc with family budgets. We must remember food items make up about 47% of the consumption basket when calculating inflation. Let's look at how people are reacting on the ground to all the data and the interpretations that we have shown, that we have literally thrown at you, because the biggest economists, at least the real-time economists, are there on the ground. Let's listen to them.
At the moment, as I'm talking to you, a small onion is being sold at rupees 120 per kg. 3 to 4 days back, the same small onion was sold at rupees 90 per kg, but now it has increased to rupees 120 per kg. This is what the shop vendors here are telling us. And as far as big onion is concerned, the rate is rupees 70 per kg. A carrot is being sold at rupees 25 per kg, beans at rupees 20 per kg, and tomato is being sold at rupees 35 to 40 per kg is what the shop vendors here, the local shop vendors in the city of Chennai, they are telling us. So the price of small onion is definitely worrying the middle class and lower middle class people, because as far as food here is concerned, small onion and tomato, these are the most two basic essentials for any kind of food, and the price of a small onion being being increased day after day is definitely come as a worrisome fact for all the middle class and lower middle class people.
I used to get vegetables for the family at around 1,000 rupees per week some time back, maybe a year or 2 years back. But now it is exactly 2,500 rupees per week. So it's really very difficult being a middle and upper middle class to manage expenses.
A big concern, especially because vegetables is the main thing for us. Like every day you have to use vegetables. So with vegetables only, it has got a lot of nutrition, everything. So if this is rising means, so naturally, it will be like the nutrition effect will be very less, especially for kids.
We are reporting from Dadar Mandi vegetable market, which is one of the biggest wholesale market when it comes to Mumbai. And definitely the problem is same whether you are a consumer or you are a seller of vegetable. The inflation has hit high, and that's the reason, while selling the vegetable, you're not able to give at a fair price, and at the same time while you buy them, it is also getting difficult on your pocket. आम आदमी अपना पॉकेट कैसे संभालेगा?
अभी इसमें कैसा है कि जो है फार्मर है उनको तो कुछ मतलब मिल नहीं पा रहा गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से ज्यादा सपोर्ट, तो वो भी क्या करेंगे, सब चीज का रेट बढ़ गया है। अभी कैसा है कि मिडिल मैन है जो वो परेशान है, उनको मतलब हर चीज के लिए कम खरीदना पड़ता है। जैसा 1 किलो है तो आधा किलो खरीदना पड़ता है, लेकिन वो जरूरत की चीजें वो तो लेनी पड़ेगी डेली डे टू डे लाइफ की।
अब कैसे कंट्रोल करेंगे? पहले जैसा बारिश नहीं हो रहा है, कुछ नहीं हो रहा है, खेती भी कम हो रहा है, आजकल खेती करने वाले भी नहीं रह गए। जो मिडिल क्लास मर रहा है, इधर जो मिडिल क्लास है वो ऊपर जा ही नहीं सकता है, जो ऊपर वाला है वो ऊपर ही जा रहा है।
Price rise, particularly of the food, has eroded the purchasing power of the Indian middle class, hurting the sales of goods and services. Now, this has translated to a poorer corporate sale. The chairman of Maruti has candidly admitted that the demand of cars has dried up. After a 2 years dream run, it is a quiet growth of 3 to 4% for the auto industry.
Well, let me introduce my panel at this point. I'm being joined by Hormazd Sorabji, who's the editor for Autocar India, Manish Bariyar, who's a political analyst, Binod Anand, who's a member for the Prime Minister's MSP Committee, Vivek Srivastava, who's a political analyst. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. Manish Bariyar, allow me to come to you first, Manish Bariyar. You just heard people respond. I mean, let's just look at it. Tomato, onions, basic, goes into every home's food, whether it be south, whether it be north. That's at least one divide that people cannot debate about. But Manish Bariyar, India is looking at a very tough time ahead. Urban consumption is down to a 2-year lowest.
Yeah, good evening, Sneha ji, and good evening to all the viewers. So, I share your concern, and let me just share with the viewers also that just last month, and this is not to just defend as such, but last month inflation was around 3.65%, which was the lowest in 5 years' time. If you look at, again, I'm not defending the rich people, but if you look at the number of high-ticket houses being sold, or for that matter, luxury goods being sold, that is again pretty high. If you look at airlines and the kind of ticket prices, and it is going completely full, again it is very high. So it's very unfortunate. But I think, as you rightly mentioned, there are a couple of factors which go into this, and this season especially, if you look at the data for last so many years, October, November is very tough for us as consumers of especially vegetables, whenever you have some unseasonal rains or when rains are actually not there or too much of rain is there. Now, again, this is not to defend, because I would really urge the government to do something, give relief to people, as the government does, and make interventions in other kinds of situations and products. I think it is very important that the government takes cognizance of this and makes, take certain right steps so that the consumers can actually, feel some relief from this heat. Global factors are also playing a role. But personally, I feel that high inflation is also a sign, and whoever, they will put a economist hat, is that actually the economy is doing pretty well, isn't it? It's only when there is a deflation or recession is when you get worried about the overall economy. But our GDP growth rate is pretty fine. But yes, as far as, so I would partly agree with your assessment. The car sales you told me, but there are other data of other companies. Maruti has actually lost a bit of market share. But if you look at other companies, they are doing pretty fine. So it's not such a doom kind of a situation. But yes, I would say food inflation is something which is pretty much a concern for everyone, including me.
Vivek Srivastava, if you can come in at this point, Vivek Srivastava, would you agree with what Manish Bariyar is saying? Because what he has said in a way is also correct. You may not agree with the way he's put in, the perspective that he's trying to pitch in, Vivek. But, I mean, what is he saying? He's saying there are air flights, flights are going full. He's talking about how cars are still being sold. He's talking about other aspects which are still working for the Indian economy. But is there something deeply worrying in terms of what we are witnessing? Because it's not like everything has slumped. It's not like everything has plummeted. But is it the middle class and the urban middle class that's bearing the brunt? Is it too early to say that, or we are right there in the middle of it?
In a country of 140 or 150 crore people, how many people travel by flights? How many people have luxury cars? I'm not talking about the small segment. That is the first thing that he needs to think before he talks. So first of all, in a country where 80 crore Indians are being fed ration by the government of India so that they can eat the food, I mean, things are in a bad shape. I do not want to quote from the hunger index and all that. It's going to be a very different kind of a debate. The fact of the matter is that you have messed up the economy. It's a very skewed economy. Certain few rich people have got everything in their hands. You have a marriage party of 5,000 crores, and on the other hand, you have people who cannot even buy onion or a tomato in their houses. So 118 individuals in this country control the maximum of resources and money, whereas the majority lives in a very, very different line in the name of privatization and working hard and performing and motivation. That is what is actually happening. Non-performing assets. And what actually happens is that in a poor country like India, time and again, to give relief to the people, the various governments after independence, you have to pitch in. It happens across the globe. You have to give relief systems. You have to control the prices. That is why you have things like Food Corporation of India. That is why you have APMCs in the mandis. But this government, the central government, was unable to do it. Because you do not have the resources, you have already made a very materialistic, privatized kind of a concept, and it is not working well. So, I mean, you say GDP hamara bahut acha hai, you know, third growing economy, fifth growing economy, so on and so forth. But then the division of wealth is not the same. The growth of family economies is not the same. Lower middle class and the middle class is not prospering the way few selective rich business houses are prospering. So, I mean, so that needs to change. And
okay,
yes,
Vivek Srivastava, one more thing before, I know Manish Bariyar has his hands up, but I want to ask you one more sequel.
Yeah.
It's interesting because there was one time when, you know, India's much loved agriculture scientist, agriculture economist wrote, "Everybody loves a good drought." Manish Bariyar made a very interesting statement. Inflation is good. It means that India is doing well, the economy is doing well. Do you agree with that? No, I don't. It is good for a few rich people.
Because he doesn't understand economics.
It is good for the big business houses, for some multinationals, which are... No, please, I understand it very well. I'm a communist. I have a different thinking than yours. I don't see numbers. I see lifestyles and the standard of living of a labor class man, which is the majority, 80% controlling your life over here, sir. आप देखते हैं upper middle class और अमीर आदमी को. मैं बात कर रहा हूँ एक गरीब मजदूर की, एक पीएन की, एक ड्राइवर की, एक कैमरामैन की, जो लोग स्ट्रगल करते हैं. Look at the kind of fees.
Even if you talk about urban India, Vivek Srivastava, even if you talk about the urban India and the middle class, the upper middle class in urban India, is inflation good?
Yeah.
I'll just come to you, Manish Bariyar. Let me just finish with Vivek and I'll come to you next.
You see, when inflation happens, when inflation happens, the first thing is the government tries to increase the interests so that the inflation can be controlled. Pehla step hai, any government across the world. But however, what happens is business borrowing stop, small business houses stop investing, people are laid off. So again, you see, it is in circles. In a country like ours, we are still not strong enough to follow the American or the European model. Somewhere the welfare state has to be there. Somewhere the government has to keep on pitching in. You have a sizable poor people over here living. And believe me, in industrial areas, people are earning to 7,000 to 10,000 rupees a month. And that is the real India. The real India is not the posh middle class living in Greater
Manish Bariyar, if you could come in, please respond, Manish Bariyar.
The colonies and labor colonies. Yeah.
No, Manish
Yeah.
Pariyar, to add to what Vivek Srivastava is saying, and
Yeah.
I know you want to object to what
Sneha ji,
he's saying, but just let me ask this
yeah,
question as
Sneha
well.
ji.
It's not just journalists who
Yeah.
are saying this. These are proper corporates, and we have the graphics. I said it out also, whether it be pizza outlets, whether it be burger outlets, whether it be those who are manufacturing chocolates, all of them are saying sales are down. People are eating out less. And this isn't about just, one strata. It's quite across the urban India. Aren't you worried that India may be looking at real
Okay.
tough times ahead?
Sneha ji, first of all, Vivek ji has a lot of respect for him, and just because he is a communist, I don't attack him personally as such, but he has contradicted himself number of times on, what he really talked about. So and I don't want to be personal on that, but whatever he said, unfortunately, it gives a very clear signal he doesn't understand economics as such. Number of contradictions. I don't want to go there. I would like to come to your question. Now, on what see, this is a very short-term cyclical event we are talking. We are not talking about one quarter. We are not talking about one financial year. Now, look at RBI's report. RBI says that we are on track as far as overall inflation is concerned, and we are not going to deviate from our benchmark of 4% inflation, which we are looking at. So this is a cyclical turn, and if you look at the data of year after year, unfortunately, we find this every year, and especially food inflation. By the way, we are a welfare state, right? And if Vivek ji himself said that 80 crore people are being fed, it's a good example of this being a welfare state, right? And I do agree that, India is still not rich, but India is also not what he portrays, right? India is different. So we need to understand that India is now two India. One India is obviously, they are struggling, and this is something which is a matter of concern, and government is seized on that matter. But there is a highly aspirational India also, and I would strongly disagree that businessmen and then 118 people are really controlling. It is completely decentralized. Anybody who has his ears and eyes open, young India is so aspirational, right? So you would know, you are young, representing young India, right? We represent young India, and we are highly aspirational.
No, Manish Pariyar,
and people
fair
are
enough.
doing
I get your
well.
point, but the
and
point
when there
is,
an inflation
there's
of
data, there's
yes.
statistics, and there are statements by those who are heading parts of India, whether it be the corporate or whether it be the other sectors, that do raise the red flags. But let me just get in at this point, Hormaz Sorabji. Thank you very much, Mr. Sorabji, for joining us. Good evening. My first question to you, Mr. Sorabji, is there a direct bearing to what we are discussing? We are discussing about food inflation, about how urban India is affected. You deal with the auto sector. Is there any direct bearing on the auto sector?
Well, I think where people feel the crunch the most is at the budget end of the market, and that has been under pressure for a long time. So if you see, let's say below 10 lakhs and even below 8 lakhs, the entry level cars, their market share is going down. Sales are under pressure over there. But as you move up and there's more price elasticity, and frankly, there are more disposable incomes, car demand isn't that badly impacted. Clearly, for certain sections of society, they are feeling the pinch a lot more, I would imagine, a function of this, because clearly you can see in the way that the current trends are there as far as car sales go.
Right. In terms of choices that people are making about, those who have to make a choice on what they must buy or what they want to buy, often known as aspirations, are trends looking at something? Are they indicative of anything?
Well, yeah, I think, obviously, cost of living goes up, inflation goes up, it kind of pinches on the pocket. But I think what is happening also is that even car prices have gone through the roof in the last couple of years, because, after COVID, suddenly the demand came back. They couldn't produce enough cars. There were, supplies of certain key components like semiconductors. So there were long waiting lists. And in that phase, a lot of manufacturers took advantage of it and raise the prices dramatically because there was a big demand. But now as the supply has happened and now as things have cooled down, customers are also realizing that a lot of the models are now overpriced and they don't want to spend that much. So there is definitely a cooling down of the overall car market. It has become a bit flat. Of course, we saw a big spurt in the festive season, but that was because there were a lot of deals and discounts. So, what I would say is that customers are still looking for a good deal. And, if they have that, they'll still kind of, override everything and probably go and spend on a car.
Mr. Sarabji, last question. I believe you have to leave after this, so thank you. But the last question really, you may correct me on this. You can say whether I'm right or wrong. I've been reading reports about how even during the festive season, the sales have been pretty low.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it depends how you look at it. I think there's, the difference between wholesale and retail. So there was a lot of unsold stock and inventory. So that has been cleared out. So if you look at that, that's been very, very good. The retail has, but the wholesale or the new car sales in that sense, or that's been a little muted. But it's at least allowed the manufacturers to really clear a lot of stock, and now inventories are down to about 30 to 40 days. They were upwards much more over 60 days. So I think I wouldn't say it's been very muted. It's been pretty good. And it's given manufacturers and dealers an opportunity to get rid of a lot of stock. But I think going forward, it's going to be, let's say quite flat. It's not going to be a disaster. From what I understand, sales haven't fallen off a cliff. They are still there. But I think, as you talked about, with the just overall inflation and the cost of living going up, I think it's at the lower end where, people are maybe looking at buying their first car or just slowly getting into car ownership. They feel the pinch the most.
Right. Mr. Sarabji, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your time. Binod Anand, if you could comment. Binod Anand, I of course have another question to ask you, but let me start with this first. Food constitutes at least 47% of the inflation basket or the consumption basket to calculate inflation, as it were. What we are looking at, the surge for food inflation, is primarily driven by vegetables, by fruits, by cereals. I mean, there is no sectoral difference for this. Households are being affected all through. It's literally pushed the retail inflation to a 14-month high. And you just heard Manish Bariyar, your fellow panelist here, say that the government needs to intervene with specific measures. How do you look at that? Okay, I think we lost Binod Anand, but Manish Bariyar, let me come to you. Manish Bariyar, okay, I think apologies for this back and forth. I believe Binod Anand is back, but Binod Anand, could you hear my question? Could you hear us?
Can you please repeat it? There was some network issue. If you just repeat it in one line, I will able to answer it.
Binod Anand, I mean, look at... Sure. So, I mean, look at the entire the consumption basket, as it were. Food constitutes at least 47% of it. And this food inflation right now is being spiraled literally by vegetables, fruits and cereals. These are going to hit households hard. And you heard your fellow panelist, Manish Bariyar, say that the government does need to intervene with very specific measures.
I must thank you, Shreya, for bringing all the interactions, and it's very interactive discussion. You see, the tomato has only 5.6% in the food basket. There are other items also. Hardly 5% it has in the food basket, and the TOP, that's tomato, potato, onion, altogether it has around 8%. So it is not the tomato which is affecting the inflation at this moment, and economists have explained in detail about it. I would not repeat the point. The matter of fact is that at least the farmers are happy that even they are being talked about the rise in inflation, and at least in the food items they are getting some respect. In India, the biggest problem are the mediators. The biggest problem is the supply chain, and biggest problem is the value chain where the farmers are not the member. So if this can be a farmer-centric thing for which the government is doing, our committee is also working on that to make it farmer-centric. And there are a slew of measurements which we will see in the coming time that this frequency would not get reduced, even the climate changes and the kind of structure which we are having in the supply chain and value chain. The solutions
Binod
are
Anand,
manifold.
are we at a point where we are saying that
NTPF
food inflation is real and it is a worry? Are we even at that?
No, it's
Are
not
we
a
at the
matter
same
of
level when it comes to that?
Shreya, it's not a matter to worry. Food inflation consists of the processed food also, where the industry is participating in that. It is not only the cereals and the oil seeds in raw where the farmers are selling and the commodities prices are at stake. Commodities prices are stable, and you see the data of the all exchanges. It's not going beyond the targeted price or the measurements. As for concern about some vegetables, especially the tomato, yes, it is a matter of concern because last year you haven't given the real price to the farmers. It's a perishable commodity. So this year the farmers have not sown it. It's a very cyclical thing, and there are also erratic rainfall, which is the cause to worry. So that's not a big problem. The only thing is that India needs to understand, and economists also need to understand that there are 4 different seasons of growing of the tomatoes, and every 4 months and 3.5 months a new cycle of tomato is being grown in
Binod
various
Anand,
parts
let me
of the
interrupt
country.
you. I'll possibly give you a minute to answer because I have to go to others as well. Binod Anand, you're again harping about tomatoes. We are not making this about tomatoes. This discussion has not been about tomatoes. What we are saying is that the current inflation, the current food inflation has been pushed by vegetables, oil prices, fruits and cereals. Is this correct? Is this food inflation, isn't it hitting? Would you say that this is largely going to hit the purse of a middle class, upper middle class family? And at least from the sectors that we have described right now, the impact is clear.
Shreya, you haven't shown on the screen the real price of these commodities. You have shown the prices and the data in total. The prices you have shown is the retail thing, whatever the video you have shown. And this data, whatever you are showing, and the Vivek was talking about, it is not the real India. The middle class, if it is not vibrant and the people are not having the money, all these marriages are lavish marriages, thousands of lakhs of marriages are going to happen. So it's a totally a section of people who are not farmer-centric, they are industry-centric, they are talking in detail about it. There are people who are having different kind of caps, like communism and different isms are having. Farmers are happy, so that's not the problem. And NCCF, that's the National Cooperative Federation, they have come up with the vans, and the prices are, wherever the prices are fluctuating, there are provisions to, help them. It happens, government is on the track, they are working
Binod
for that.
Anand, I kind of fail to understand what you're saying, but let me just very quickly get a response to what you're saying. Vivek Srivastava, do you want to respond?
Yeah. See, first of all, this government, it came up with the farmers bill. Now the farmer bill said Food Corporation of India को side करो. Adani साहब माल बेचेंगे और आप directly बेचो. So they were virtually trying to remove the government control, the APMC and the other bodies. No.
We are not discussing the farmers bill.
No. Hold on, sir. I'll be coming to it. No, you are not discussing. You please listen to me.
By the way,
you said that.
you must understand
Sir,
the
hold
MSP
on.
and the farmers
Okay,
bill.
I possibly will give you both 1 minute. Binod Anand, give me 1 minute. Let Vivek Srivastava answer and we'll come right back to you. Vivek Srivastava, go ahead, answer.
Just a rubbish thing you are talking about the farmers bill
Let
at
me
this
speak.
moment.
I'm not speaking. No.
must
What do you mean by rubbish? What do you mean by rubbish?
Binod Anand,
what do you mean by rubbish?
Binod Anand, I will give you the
don't
time.
read
Allow
your
Vivek
lecture.
Srivastava to speak.
No, you have
Binod
not given me
Anand,
the time.
Minister of India.
all right, Vivek Srivastava, I can just ignore that. Please go ahead, make your point. I'm short on time. I don't want this to go in rhetoric. Vivek Srivastava, please answer.
No. Listen to me,
Vivek
Mr.
Srivastava,
Binod
go ahead,
Anand, and
answer,
let me
please.
speak peacefully first. Don't get agitated because I've caught you on the wrong foot. First of all, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, after the death of 800 farmers, apologized to the nation and took back the bills because he knew he was wrong. and the government admitted it, and we praised the government for it. Any government who recognizes its faults should be praised, and I praise it. It was delayed, but yes, it was wrong. It was wrong because you were removing the government control. You were saying that a farmer can directly sell the crops anywhere to any private vendor. And the moment that was happening, you were removing the FCI, you were removing the government control, and the prices, there would have been no price control in this country. That was the first offshoot, that the objection we had. MSP, are you willing to give MSP to the farmers today? You are talking about helping the farmers in the welfare means. The farmers' bodies, and we are coordinating with them on a daily basis. We want you to provide minimum support price to all the farmers. Is the government going to give it? Is the agricultural minister ready for it? No, you are not ready for it, sir.
Okay, let Binod Anand respond. Binod Anand, you have 1 minute. Please respond, Binod Anand.
That means they have nothing in hands. Yeah, okay.
Vivek Srivastava, I'm short on time. Let Binod Anand respond.
Yeah. Please go ahead, sir.
And is confusing the country.
Yes.
Minimum support is price is only for the scheduled commodities, which government is giving more than like earlier government has given. So please reread the data.
No.
Since you have very less time, all the food commodities,
No,
you don't know the country, you don't know the system. You just talk rubbish thing about the. You don't have any differentiation between Farmers Act and bill. You talk here and there bits and pieces, and you are again interrupting me. Please don't interrupt me. I have listened to you very carefully, even after you have shown the different, kind of gestures. You listen. There are only.
Please respond.
There are only 5 to 6.
Yes.
There are only 5 to 6 commodities over which the maximum part of the MSP is given. Our government is giving the MSP more than anyone. You see the data, and whole nation is aware about it. And that is why the people are
don't say
winning
more
the
than
election.
anyone.
You are losing
What is the
election.
demand of the farmers? Tell that.
It doesn't matter whether it is more
Again,
than
you are
the other
interrupting me,
governments
Mr.
at this
Vivek.
point or
No,
not.
where
The
does election
point,
come into
Binod
picture?
Anand, and that's
Please
what we're
follow the
trying to
protocol.
understand
Let me speak.
is
Let me speak,
India getting into a place where people are going to be forced to spend more in terms of getting the essentials, and that's the big concern. Allow me to get in Manish Bariyar at this point. Manish Bariyar, based on the discussion that we have had right from the beginning till now, let me ask you at this point, there was a time when India used to be divided into two, whether it were urban or rural, or it used to be haves or haves not. Is it fair to say that India is clearly not as distinctly as divided as only that, but you also have a very clear division between the haves as well? And inflation, the food inflation, even at whatever level it is now, is clearly visible in terms of that. So therefore, if you have money, you're able to spend in the higher end of cars. If you have money, you can go into the higher dining areas. If you have money, you will fly to exotic locations. But if you still have money but don't have that enough money, your purse is going to be tightened. Manish Bariyar.
Yeah, so, Sneha ji, I would partially agree with you. See, if you look at currently, the interest rates are also very high. So the gentleman who was talking about car sales, if you see, and he, he kind of, I had not listened to him before, but he echoed what I said. See, I'll just give you a car example itself. Because the manufacturers got greedy, they increased the prices, and at the same time, as you know, that inflation has been something which has been a concern for RBI and globally also. Even the US election this time, Trump actually harped on inflation, and it was it seems that, he got a lot of votes because he harped on that inflation. So inflation is a global concern, and India cannot be, away from it. And that's why the interest rates are high. And because interest rates are high, you will find the EMIs are high, and the number of consumables, which as a typical middle class we consume now, is much higher than what we used to consume. So obviously, and the salaries and the other things have not grown, and the income has not grown in that proportion, because the inflation has gone up, and especially food inflation. So I would say that I would echo some of your sentiments that the government has to really take it as a concern, because food inflation impacts everyone. And even the upper middle class, there is no class which is like except the uber rich if you leave them, but then everybody gets impacted. And a lady was talking about how 2,500 rupees from 1,000 to 2,500. So somebody who's spending 10,000, 15,000 on on vegetables, they are not middle class. They are still upper middle class. So therefore, it's a concern, and I would urge government to really have a look at it, because it impacts people, both poor as well as upper middle class, badly. So let's not forget the middle and upper middle class, because they do get impacted by these food inflation. And the way government looks at the farmers, they should look at the concern of the upper middle class and the middle class people too. And you know, everyone for that matter, right from poor to upper middle class, they get impacted by this.
Right.
So some measures, some relief in terms of policy. And this government I find it is pretty reasonable. If the demand comes from it and from programs like yours, if they get seized of the matter, I'm sure something would happen. But there is something which is required. You can, you know, feel
Vivek
the pinch.
Srivastava, a minute to you, Vivek Srivastava, to respond. But Vivek Srivastava, let me just ask you this. At least I and people like me were looking forward to possibly the rate cuts for the interest rates. That's definitely not happening now.
Yes, that won't happen. That won't happen because the moment that happens, a lot of investment from the business sides goes down. So that's a different part of economics. I'm talking of a different thing. Do you know how minimum wages are calculated? They are calculated by the calories a poor man family eats in a month. And that is how the government calculates what should be the minimum wages in a particular area. In Delhi, it is 16,500 rupees for a simple helper in a factory, although it is never given. So, you know, the moment essential commodities like foods, they become expensive, all these theoretical things about buying cars and flying in flights, they become meaningless. Your majority of the people in this nation, even the upper middle class for that matter, are very conscious of what they are spending and where they're eating out, how they're eating out. There was a time when eating out used to be a very luxury even for the middle class. Then after you know, the software industries came up and the IT boom happened and the government exports increased, suddenly a lot of cultural changes happened. Eating out became a daily routine. But things cannot be managed by simply saying, you know, you have to get economic equality into the country. That is very necessary. Your economic policies should be balanced. Your economic policies cannot be only for a few super rich, the way the Modi government has been making. And that is what is my grudge against it. It needs to be more balanced automatically. Even if inflation happens, the effect won't be there.
Okay.
That's the way I feel.
All right. I know, Manish Bariyar, you had to say something, but I'm totally out of time, Manish Bariyar. I hope you'll allow me that liberty. We're totally out of time. Manish Bariyar,
No, it's okay.
Binod Anand.
Yeah, sure.
Manish Bariyar, I'll give you 5 seconds. Please respond. 5 seconds.
Yeah, you know, I don't know what kind of world Vivek ji lives in, but, you know, I feel that this government actually does a lot of things and a lot of schemes are there in the country for people who look forward, people who are progressive, people who would like to really grow. And this young country, this young India is basically very optimistic.
I think there will have to be
I don't know from where this
from
pessimism
Vivek.
comes from.
I don't have the time for that. But Manish Bariyar, Binod Anand, as well as Vivek Srivastava, thank you very much for taking your time out, for talking to us, for sharing your opinions. One thing is for real, whichever part of the divide you are, India is at the brink of a food inflation and purses are already seeing the crunch. Thank you very much for joining us. It's time for a very short break. On the other side, we'll bring you all the news.